Hello and welcome back to Perspectives. On today's show, we have our usual roundup of the big stories around the world relevant to the Sikh community, and then we'll dive into two particular stories in more detail. In California, the passage of a new anti-transnational repression bill gathers apace. Meanwhile, Hindutva organisations across the US spit and scream in protest, claiming it's all just anti-Hindu hatred. More on that in a moment. And the subject of monsoon floods hits the headlines once again as Sikh Charities are, as always, at the front line helping those in need in Punjab. But once again, it does raise the demand for a sovereign Sikh nation so that Punjab's own water can be better managed by Khalistan rather than Delhi. All this and more on today's show, but joining me, as always, is our very own correspondent in Canada, James Cousineau. Good morning, James.
Good morning, Angus, and good morning to our viewers out there. We've noticed that you are taking part in the Substack option as well, sharing some great ideas on how we can bring Substack to a new level. And of course, we're taking all those suggestions greatly. And we also appreciate any suggestions as we are gearing up to start going live. So anything that you would like to see on this show, let us know in the comments section. You are a valuable part of our program, not just as a viewer, but a part of the conversation. So with that, of course, stick around to the end so you can see what comments make it to the show this week, or at least today. Angus, back to you.
Indeed, and James and I together will be bringing you our perspectives on the daily news affecting the Sikh community across the world. And indeed, at the end of the show, do stay tuned for that, where we'll cover loads of your great comments. Right, James, lots to get through today. What are you going to start us off with this morning?
Of course, we are talking about different headlines that are screaming in from around the world, or should I say, just floating in, because we are looking once again at Punjab being underwater. And we don't say that in a figurative sense, we actually say that in a literal sense this week. There is ongoing flooding, as we all know, is a regular at this time of year, and this problem is not going away. As such, of course, the monsoon season every year brings the same warnings, but also the same results. And that is especially true when you look at the torrential rains in the upstream state of Himachal, as well as other regions such as basically everybody along the Beas River and the Sutlej River. It just really impacts a lot. Now, what's really concerning right now is that as many farms are underwater, this state is taking its time, as well as the federal government, in terms of bringing the much needed help to the region. In parts of that, a lot of the farmers are being forced to supply their own diesel fuel for the water pumps to get the fields dried out and to try and reduce the long-term damage. Now, for those crops that are already ready to be pulled from the fields, or those that have been planted and ready for later in the season, of course, those stand a very little chance of any type of recovery in terms of the use or the crop recovery by any farmers or the government. But again, it's also an ongoing concern. And when you look at the different states and the different regions, there are people that have come up with other ideas that have not been implemented as of yet. Now, the political response to the crisis, as I said, it has been very contentious. Now, the SAD president, Sukhbir Singh Badal, after visiting the flood-hit regions in certain areas, sharply criticized the state government's relief efforts. He highlighted what he termed as an absence of any help from the state government, pointing to the desperate situation again, where I brought up that a lot of the farmers are putting in their own money, up to 1,000 rupees per acre, and that's just for the diesel and the water pumps alone. That doesn't include any other remediation or recovery. Now, the direct appeal to the central government, Badal has demanded a comprehensive financial package, not just for immediate relief, but to the long-term solutions, whether that is some types of dikes to be built along. But regardless as to what the solution is, there has to be a better way in order for them to look to the future to counter all of this flooding. He also directed a pointed call towards neighboring states of Haryana and Rajasthan, which receive water from Punjab's rivers, insisting that they should also contribute financially to the relief efforts. As we stated, that is annual problem, and it is not one that's going away soon. So I think that when you learn not only from the recent and ongoing problems in Punjab, but also around the world. I know that we have flooding here in British Columbia. We're in a rainforest, and we do experience that, but we have built dike systems, and they failed a few years ago. So therefore, we had to look at newer technologies and newer ways to help prevent the mass flooding of farmland. Especially in the Fraser Valley, where it's some of the most fertile farmland in Canada. So again, very, very important to India is Punjab's farmland. It is the breadbasket of the country, and it is essential that they find ways in which to mitigate the risks in the future. It's not a once-off, it is an ongoing issue, and therefore needs a long-term solution. In terms of other news going on within India, of course, we also are looking at the proxy war for the political dominance. Now, as those floodwaters are receding, a political storm is gathering force. And why would that be? Well, it has to do with a lot of the social programs and the way in which aid is distributed. Now, this here, sorry, I jumped ahead to another story. My apologies, or I jumped ahead from where you're looking at anyway. So let's continue on. Now, as I said, the food security and the dominance there is a big problem. What is happening is that the BJP is canceling a lot of what they call the system credit cards or benefit cards. And therefore, people are just all of a sudden going to use their cards to get food or other necessities, and they don't work. Now, there's no quick remedy that's in place to fix this, and that is a major concern. Instead, the opposing party is looking to have them instead reinstate all of those cards and find a way to filter out the so-called fraud or the abusers of the system, instead of just cutting people off and leaving it at that. Now, the BJP has come in and said that they will set up emergency recruitment or reassignment centers where people can re-sign up and be a part of the program, but it's going to take time for them to reach out into all of these communities. Again, not a very favorable or popular idea, but again, it shows that they are trying to get some responsibility in terms of the program. Now, a part of it, though, it looks like it could very well be political. Is the BJP just looking to garner favor directly with those in the Punjab instead of allowing the state government to handle these programs? And is it just a way of trying to make the voting public feel like they're being looked after by that government? Now, the Adami Party, or the AAP, is saying that under his program, not a single card will be canceled, and under no circumstance will he allow it to happen now. But again, it is like a war of the two parties trying to curry favor, one at a state level, one at a federal level, in order to gain curry and gain favor with those voters. So again, some are calling it just a strictly political move, while others say that it is a necessary evil to root out all of the fraud and waste in the programs. They also claim, in terms of the BJP, that the state government is not doing enough to move expeditiously when it comes to enrollment. Not only in that program, but they actually veered off in a different direction, talking about driver's licenses and all kinds of different programs that they feel the state is lacking in resources and ability to handle. And this just is another one that they're piling on to try and remove some credibility from the state government in Punjab. Why that is? Well, I'll let your imagination go to town on that, because it very well could be that they see Khalistan as a real potential threat in the future in terms of breaking away and becoming an independent nation. This would allow them more control and again, move in more rapidly to stop any type of real referendum happening in Punjab. Moving along here beneath the headlines of the floods and the political feuds. And we know the political feuds never end. So we will take a look instead at the insidious crisis of drug addiction as it continues to devastate Punjab's social fabric. Now, arrests and seizures of narcotics are a daily occurrence in the region, and that is not a coincidence, as they are right along an open, very fluid border in which the drugs can cross. Now, as they try to crack down on it, there was a report in the Indian Politics and Law Review Journal that reframes the issue, and they're arguing that labeling Punjab the drug capital of India is a convenient scapegoat for what is a fundamental crisis of governance failure. So they are putting it right back on the federal government, saying that you're failing not only Punjab, but other regions as well that border any other country that's allowing them to come in. Now, they also went on to shed some light on other issues. The fact that the leadership is abandoning its people when it comes to the drug crisis, and also a simplistic narrative that they are shredding of narco-terrorism. Instead, they're pointing to profound socioeconomic status and different despair when it comes in as a primary driver of the addiction problem. It presents a stark contrast and a stark statistic of 79% of addicts in the state are either unemployed or working in precarious part-time jobs, directly linking the crisis to a lack of opportunity when it comes to employment and the future of their families or their whole community. And we know the villages, they work together, they come together to help each other. But again, the drug problem and epidemic that's gripping the world makes that much less likely to happen. It breaks up the communities, it breaks up families, and of course it breaks up a whole country, as you can see here, or anywhere else worldwide where the drug problem is at that record level. Now let's move on to look at some activism, adversity, and adaptation. Yes, the Khalistan referendum in the shadow of repression. Of course, we've talked in great lengths already about the Khalistan referendum that happened in Washington. And we're not going to get into a great deal of it here. We're just going to give you a quick update. And that was that the stated objective of the global polling exercise, which is taking place in Canada, the UK, Italy, and Australia, is to build a case for that Sikh self-determination and have it presented before the United Nations. And there's a lot of support for that from around the world. But going back to the previous stories, whether it is to do with the drug infiltration in the region of Punjab, whether it has to do with the water management and the land management, a lot of these are just ongoing arguments to make the Khalistan sovereign nation a reality. Now, when the activism is unfolding under a dark and threatening cloud alleging state-sponsored repression, we know that this is going on, and it is not something that's been new. And a press conference was held by Sikhs for Justice General Counsel Gurpatwant Singh Pannoon in Washington ahead of the event. And of course, that's, talking about the India transnational repression on U.S. soil. This is a direct reference to the foiled plot to assassinate Pannoon himself, an operation that the U.S. authorities allege was orchestrated by Indian officials and the Indian Research and Analysis Wing, and that, of course, led to that federal indictment in New York. Now, as that continues on, it is very important to state that there is ongoing investigations and more information coming out that surrounds the central question, which is what governments are facing, not just in Washington and Ottawa, but also London and elsewhere. And that is, can the Sikhs exercise their right to peaceful political expression without the fear of being targeted by government? And the same goes for international journalists who may speak out against the BJP, against the RSS, about Hindutva, or about Ra. So again, just a quick overview on that, and there are more investigations being opened. Now, moving on, of course, we also have heard about the tragedy in California. When traffic tragedies happen and they put the responsibility not on an individual but a whole group of people, it leads to knee-jerk reactions. And that's exactly what we're seeing in the United States, whether it's coming from the White House or the state level in California. It is looking very ugly when it comes to this recent accident where an individual from India was driving a truck, went to pull a U-turn, and collided with another vehicle, causing the death of several. Now, within the Sikh diaspora, they have been thrown into real concern here, and it's the vulnerabilities that are really, really needing to be protected here, because the accident that happened now, they are looking at actually banning all work visas for truck drivers coming in from India and other points. This would remove 150,000 truck drivers off American highways just for the Sikh community alone, and what they contribute to the transportation system throughout the United States and the supply chain. Now, as this moves on, of course, that brings a huge concern that not only are you removing these vehicles and these truckers from the supply chain, but you're also creating a point where 150,000 Sikhs are going to be out of work immediately if all of their visas are canceled. And again, this is the result of one individual's actions. It's not an ongoing problem throughout the country that we're seeing massive amounts of accidents and fatalities as a result of these drivers. These are very one-off incidents, and that would be like saying that somebody at the age of 66, well, they crashed into a car and unfortunately there were fatalities, so now we're not going to let anybody over 66 drive. It's the same type of knee-jerk reaction that we're seeing, and not one that's going to actually bring any tangible results in road safety. Now, of course, we've also looked at other issues this week. I'm talking about the violence against Sikh individuals, whether that was the two elderly Sikh men in the UK or the gentleman that was attacked in New York, was it New York? Might have been. But in any event, in the US, and again, are we going to start seeing more because of the way that the Sikhs are being treated in the communities and across the nation, being painted in another dark light? Are we going to see more anger and frustration pointed towards the community when it is completely out of line to paint them all with one brush as a result of one truck driver? It's just ridiculous, and the reaction, I think, is way overreaching. Now, let's take a look at a good news story to a point. Now, in Mackenzie, British Columbia, just a small, beautiful town way up north towards Prince George and beyond. Now, this is a small community that has relied on the logging industry for decades and decades, and actually probably over a century. Now, Mackenzie is very reliant on that, and over the last several years, unfortunately, a lot of the mills have closed down. Now, at one time, the Sikh community in the region, because of their involvement with the wood mill there and the logging industry, they had about a population of 400. At this time, though, the population has dwindled with the closure of all of these mills and forestry companies. That's created a real shortage of employment in the area. So now the Gurdwara, of course, is a big responsibility when it comes to maintaining it, not just physically, but more financially. And when you have a very small group of Sikhs left in the community, that makes it even more burdensome when the employment rates are down and wages are down as well. So what they've decided to do is actually perform a very big act of selfless service, also known as seva, and they are giving the Sikh Gurdwara to the community. They're going to hand it over, the community will maintain it, and it'll be used for all community events and opened up to the entire region. And again, they will have use of it, but so will everybody else in the community. And that is just another example that even though things may not be going great for the Sikh community, which has dwindled in their area, they still go out of their way to give back to the community as a whole and really reach out. So again, I think that's a beautiful story that has come in, and congratulations to the Mackenzie community for your new community center, and what an amazing move by the Sikhs in Mackenzie, British Columbia. Now, we will finish up here quickly as we are looking at running out of time as usual because we have a lot to get through. But we will just talk quickly about the major development that's underway concerning the governance of the Sikh community's most powerful institution. Yes, we have talked about this, the 14-year delay with the vote going on or coming up with the India central government, and that's the preparations for the election in the Shiromani Gurdwara Parliament Committee. SGPC, and I always get tongue-tied. But in any event, they are moving forward with the election planning. The chief commissioner has been appointed, and of course, it's an important process. But there are still some legal maneuvers to make. There are still some court cases going on, and we'll keep an eye on that. But I just want to bring that up quickly. We've got a bit more information in the article that you can find on our Substack as we draw closer to the end of time here. And I just mean on the show. Don't panic, folks. So again, we have lots of information there and other articles, but again, we will leave those onto the Substack for you and let you review them and read them in more depth. We are proud to have that new option for our viewers, but again, a lot that we tried to get through quickly there, Angus.
Indeed, lots of stories there. And one thing that struck me actually going through a lot of those stories, we often talk about the central control of Delhi and how it has really this hand of utter control over the politics, the social structure, the everything of Punjab. And this really is one of the key drivers of why the Khalistan movement is gaining so much momentum. And of course, so many of those stories are directly affected by the mismanagement or the deliberate mismanagement from Delhi, from this centralised control from Delhi. We looked at, for example, the water story, the monsoon, which I'm going to talk about at length in a moment. Basically, every year we have the same story about the monsoon floods. The monsoon, those 5 rivers come belting down from the Himalayas and cause devastation right across that whole northwestern part of India and, of course, Pakistan as well, in Pakistan's side of Punjab and the Indian Punjab. But a lot of this always comes down to bad management. Of course, the dams that control the water flow are controlled essentially indirectly by Delhi. They have their own local water management companies, but ultimately they answer to Delhi. And it is the mismanagement of the water. They store up and then they release it when suddenly they find, oh no, the dam's about to burst, we have to release it. And then, of course, cause devastating floods downstream. So we've got the problems in the monsoon, and then conversely in the summer dry months, when the farmers need the water for irrigation, suddenly there's no water. All the dams are low, the water tables drop because there has been no water storage. And it always comes back to poor management of water, this precious resource of which, ironically, Punjab, which will be Khalistan one day, has this massive supply of water. It has every monsoon season. It can top up its water supply almost ad infinitum. And then during the dry months, the months when it needs to irrigate the crops, it will have all the water it ever needs. But it all comes down to management. And once again, this points, as I started, it points to the single key factor is that Khalistan has to happen essentially because the people in the Punjab area, in the whole of that whole northwestern side of India, they want this sovereign control. They want the control to make their own decisions, to basically manage their own local issues better. The other story, of course, is the welfare story. And this is where, again, you've got the Aam Aadmi Party playing politics with the BJP, all about welfare. And, of course, people who are reliant on food handouts, essentially, are ultimately reliant on decision makers in Delhi. Now, why should they be? Why should their mouths be fed by decision makers hundreds of miles away in Delhi, when of course those decisions should be made locally? The resources should be sourced locally. Punjab is not short of food. Punjab, as you said, James, is the breadbasket of India. Punjab, in which case one day will be Khalistan, can supply its own food and feed its own people. Why on earth should the people who live in the breadbasket of India be reliant on political handouts, which are essentially withdrawn and dished out through political expediency and basically vote rigging? In other words, we want your vote, you vote for us and we'll feed you. What sort of dynamic is that? That is not a dynamic that Khalistan wants to live by. Khalistan will live by the basic dynamic that we will feed our own people with our own food that we grow within our own state. It's plain and simple. And then, of course, the other story there, we talked about, you touched on the drugs argument, which actually people can read more detail on Substack about. But there's the drug argument. Of course, there's this massive drug problem. Where's the drug problem coming from? It's not coming from within the Punjab. It's coming from outside the Punjab. It is players, big players outside the Punjab, who are deliberately pouring in drugs into the Punjab to undermine the social structure of the Punjab. They know full well what they're doing. Drugs dissolve social structure from within. They dissolve that structure, that vertebrae of morality created by the Sikh religion that creates a functioning, well-functioning moral society in Punjab. That is being dissolved by drugs. And it's a deliberate, we often know and we often say that it is a deliberate policy by bad actors outside the Punjab who are deliberately trying to undermine the growing strength of the Sikh people and this pro-Khalistan movement by pouring drugs in and attacking the youths. And again, it all comes back down to control. The Khalistan wants to establish itself. The people of Punjab want their own control, their own decision-making capability, so they can get rid of these social problems. They can get rid of the problems of the water management. They can get rid of the welfare problems. These are all easily solvable if Khalistan had its own decision-making capability, James. And this, I think it's very interesting that all these stories all come back to that one central key theme. Once Khalistan is established, the people of northwest India in that area can make their own decisions and improve their lives massively.
Exactly, Angus, and that's what it comes down to at the end of the day. It's about that sovereignty, it's about the independence, and we can look back to the Sikh Empire, we can look forward to Khalistan, and we know that the same results are going to be in the end, and that is an all-inclusive society that doesn't leave anyone behind, that is open to everyone equally, and of course doesn't leave anyone behind, but most of all knows how to manage their resources and make sure they take preventative steps so that the farms are not wiped out year after year as a result of the monsoon season.
Indeed, and I'm going to go into my first story, which really is an extension of what we've been talking about already, and this is the water management. And we do, ironically, we talk about this every single year, the devastation created by these, by the huge monsoon floods. And it has affected large parts of northwest India, not just northwest India, but Pakistan. It's particularly the Pakistan Punjab side, which ultimately we hope will one day form part of the overall Khalistan. But it's what has been reported is how the Sikhs, as always, once again have stepped up to the plate. They have stepped forward as part of their saver, their selfless service to help those in desperate need. Now, the news coming out of the area is pretty devastating. Of course, these monsoon floods and the rains have created this enormous deluge of water coming down from the Himalayas since June, really. Now, the National Disaster Management Authority in Pakistan has reported at least 978 injuries. I mean, the numbers vary depending on which source you read, but ultimately the numbers are huge. But the destruction and damage is so extensive, they reckon at least 2,500 houses have been destroyed, 1,000 livestock have been lost. That's as of just a few days ago, and this is just on the Pakistan Punjab side. And 1,000 livestock, of course, you scale that up. Every cow that is lost, every cattle that is lost, every asset that is lost, that is an asset that feeds people. This is huge. The devastation isn't just instant. It then has this long-term effect that, of course, when the livestock is gone, that is the future food for families and whole villages. So, again, the impact is enormous, and, of course, it stretches over time. Now, the weather is forecast to continue into at least early September, which means this is just going to continue. And of course, the weather is creating landslides, it's destroying crops, it's killing livestock. So again, the impact is absolutely enormous. Now, the areas that are particularly affected, it's the northwestern province of Khyber Pakhtunkhwa has borne the brunt of this, and a state of emergency has been declared in 9 districts, which include primarily Buna, Shangla and Mansehra. And this was after one particular set of torrential rains between the 15th and the 19th of August, which killed nearly 400 people, 182 injured, and there's nearly 1,500 homes destroyed. Nearly 100 schools were also destroyed, and sadly, at least 21 children are known to be amongst those who have lost their lives, unfortunately, with this recent spate of flooding. Now, across the wider province of Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, at least 314 people have been killed, according to one report, 156 injured. And Buna district, where, of course, the worst affected impact has been felt, well, they report at least 217 fatalities in that area. And they reckon that at least 50% of houses in that area have been completely destroyed, and the rest are no longer habitable. In other words, pretty much all the housing stock, basically the whole housing in that whole area, is pretty much either destroyed or unusable. And again, you imagine the impact, the social impact that it's going to have. And in Pakistan, another source says at least 507 have died and more than 700 injured in rain-related incidents since the monsoon started in late June. That's according to the National Disaster Management Agency. Right. Now, of course, the one I suppose silver lining of this is the Sikh Charities once again have stepped up, as they always do in such situations. They're always at the forefront. They're always the vanguard of all these natural disasters. And again, with so little publicity, they just quietly get on with what they do. And wherever disasters like this happen in the world, it's always the Sikh Charities that are there at the forefront. And again, you often hear about the Red Cross and the Red Crescent and all these very high profile aid operations. They're always there with their massive PR campaigns. The Sikh community does not really have a PR campaign. It channels every single dollar, pound, rupee, whatever, every single element of money donations goes towards actually helping people on the front line. It's not all about the PR. And you look at the marketing budgets of, and I'm going on a slight tangent here, but the marketing budgets of the Red Cross, the Red Crescent, and all these big high-profile charities, Oxfam, I mean, we all know the names. Of course you know the names because they spend millions every year publicising what they do. Now, the obvious argument to that is, well, we need to publicise to get people to donate. Yeah, well, fine. Right. But what do the Sikh Charities do? They don't publicise. They don't have big television adverts. They don't have big adverts appearing across social media, whatever. They just quietly get on with it. They spread the word through word of mouth. They do spread their word through social media, through their own communities. But it's their own community that steps up and donates. Part of every individual Sikh's saver is to donate to these charities, and they do it quietly. They do it without fanfare. They just quietly get on with it. And this is why Sikh Charities are so effective in places like this, because every single dollar, every single pound, every single rupee, whatever, that is donated goes straight into these charities' frontline operations just to ensure that people are helped. And every piece of currency is actually 100% of it is efficiently used to help people, those in need. And of course, as part of that, there have been various charities who have been there. And monsoon conditions and inadequate disaster preparation, again, it comes back to this whole argument about Khalistan. They are blaming that its inadequate disaster preparation has been the largest contributor to flooding in these regions, and of course has contributed to the high level of casualties. And again, it comes back to this argument about why Khalistan needs to exist, because otherwise we wouldn't need these charities to spend so much effort and resources in helping so many people. United Sikhs are the charity at the forefront, the largest charity actually operating in these areas. And they say flash floods have devastated Buna district, leaving homes filled with mud, roads destroyed, families surrounded by unbearable conditions, missing lives, trapped cattle, and the rapid spread of disease like cholera, dysentery, skin infections. The crisis deepens each day, and they are appealing actually through social media, through the community. Please go on their website, please contribute. So James, yeah, it's all about, I mean, we know the big headline story, but the real story here, as I've just alluded to here, is it's the Sikh Charities without the fanfare, without the big PR exercises, without these massive adverts. They're quietly there on the front line, doing their work, helping those in need. It's always the same case, isn't it?
Absolutely, and that's something that we've talked about after many catastrophic events around the world. And we always come to that conclusion that, the Sikh community is always there. They're always, just nothing but praise for what they do. And they are not advertising online. They are not spending money. They are organically, through people who appreciate what they're doing and volunteers who are giving their time to make it happen, organically place these things out on social media. And it's not to brag. It's not to beg for dollars. It's just to raise that awareness that there is a need there, and that all of the money that's being donated and all of the other resources, whether it's rice or clothing or whatever, are going to those in need. But they're not wasting money on online campaigns and television commercials and print advertising, and we see that. So
indeed, and I have to say, just well done to the community just for once again stepping
Absolutely.
up so effectively to people in such desperate, dire needs. So, okay, let's move on to my second story. Let's change the subject completely and let's hop massively across the Atlantic to the United States. Now, in California, we have mentioned this before. There is a new bill that's going through. It is called SB509. It is a bill to stand against transnational oppression. It is new legislation designed to strengthen the protections for they say it's for diaspora communities, but of course the largest community affected most of all by transnational oppression, certainly in California, is of course the Sikh community. And a couple of days ago in California, the committee had a big debate, a big discussion about SB 509, and they invited members from the public to contribute their comments, their contributions into this debate. And as part of this, more than 150 community members from right across the state and representing numerous Gurdwaras did come forward and spoke at the California Assembly Appropriations Committee. And they had this opportunity to give their opinion about SB 509 and really to explain why they think it is such a critical bill designed to address transnational oppression. And those in the community have actually said, look, if you are in California and amongst the Sikh community, they have said that please write to your assembly member. And if you go on the Sikh Coalition's website, there is a link there and a whole form to fill in that will help you and assist you and facilitate you to write to your assembly member to voice your support for SB 509. Really important that you do. Now, SB 509, what is it? Well, it is a bill that's been proposed by a senator, Senator Ana Caballero. She's a Democrat, and she introduced it as a critical measure to address this growing threat of transnational oppression. Particularly in California, but of course it has a wider impact across the United States, because if California adopted, it's most likely that other states will also adopt a similar bill. Now, the bill ensures that law enforcement officers receive specialised training. This is what it's all about. It is slightly niche. It is primarily about training. I'm going to talk about how Hindutva responded to this, which is quite interesting, in a moment. But basically, it's actually a pretty innocuous bill. There's nothing too controversial about this. All it is, it's being brought in to ensure that officers in the various law enforcement agencies across the state receive specialised training to help them identify and respond to the persecution of diaspora communities by foreign governments, reinforcing California's commitment to justice, as they say, and safety for all residents. Now, the senator says, at its core, SB 509 is about upholding the fundamental rights of freedom, safety and self-expression of diaspora communities. Too often, individuals who fled persecution in their home countries search for asylum and safety, yet they continue to face harassment, intimidation and threats, even in California. By requiring the Office of Emergency Services and the Commission on Peace Officer Standards and Training to develop specialised training for law enforcement, this bill will equip officers to recognise, document and respond to the growing threat posed by foreign governments targeting diaspora communities. Now, note here, this bill does not specifically mention India. It is very generic in nature. It just says any persecution against any diaspora communities. And this is genuine. This bill is brought about to protect all diaspora communities. And it is setting out the fact that here in California, we respect democracy. We respect the right of people to carry on their daily lives without fear from persecution or oppression, harassment or intimidation in any form from overseas. And again, the bill is designed to ensure that any crimes that occur, any transnational oppression at whatever level, whether it's online simple intimidation all the way through to physical violence in the real world, is that it is recorded, that data is collated, and then policies are designed around that to combat it, and training is then given to those people in law enforcement, firstly to recognise it, to deal with it and respond to it. And that is important. Because as I often say when we talk about these stories, until you recognise it, you can't then deal with it. So this bill is brought in to ensure that people actually recognise it at an official level, any transnational repression. Now, they said, while existing federal protections address some aspects of transnational repression, local law enforcement agencies often lack the necessary training to recognise these threats and support affected communities. And then the bill fills the gap by requiring these various entities to collaborate amongst each other to develop a specialised curriculum for law enforcement. The training will equip officers with the tools to document incidents, so important to document these, identify patterns of harassment and provide appropriate resources to victims. In other words, it will be effective to recognise it and then deal with it. And this is why Hindutva, as it turns out, is actually getting a little bit upset and a bit worried about this, because they realise this bill is actually putting into place all the mechanisms needed to recognise basically what Hindutva are up to behind the scenes. Now, as a result of this, unsurprisingly, now again, as I said, this bill is relatively innocuous. It's all about training law enforcement. Why on earth would this be controversial? Why on earth would this upset India and particularly Hindutva? Well, it certainly has done. Because, and I have to thank one of our correspondents for, and you know who you are, thank you for this, for emailing and sending us various examples of how Hindutva and the Hindutva media and the news outlets have responded to this. Of course, in very typical sort of Indian fashion, you often get these sort of talk shows where they have a panel of various guests. Well, one in particular, and a very typical one, actually typifies the Hindutva response. And it was, again, it was an interview program, and they interviewed two members of the Coalition of Hindus of North America. Yes, it's another one of these Hindutva organisations. We often talk about these on the face of it, these fairly benign organisations that are there to represent the Hindu diaspora in America. Nothing wrong with that. Of course, we like Hindus, we're nothing against Hindus as a generalisation. It's where the Hindutva extremists get involved. And of course, they push these, on the face of it, these benign organisations, these Hindu organisations saying, oh yeah, we're here to protect Hindu rights. Absolutely, that is your prerogative to do so. But in fact, a lot of these organisations are basically the fronts of the RSS. They are the fronts for Hindutva, to push the Hindutva agenda across America, and to, by doing that, to oppress other minority diaspora communities like Sikhs. Now, in one of these, and many of these, they have talked a lot about this SB509, and they're saying how evil it is. They're saying, look, no, this on the face of it, they're saying, oh, no, it is a benign thing. They're saying, oh, it's all very well doing this, and it's all about training. But in fact, they're saying it is a front, it is a direct attack on Hindus. And they're saying this whole bill is designed specifically to be anti-Indian. It's anti-Hindu. It's anti-this. It's anti-that. They're saying it's this evil bill that's been brought in by evil forces. By that, of course, they're accusing the Sikh community of pushing this bill. Basically, their narrative is saying that this bill is designed by evil Sikh community forces to target and attack innocent Hindus. And you can see how the narrative has changed around. Now, this bill doesn't mention India. Deliberately so, it does not mention India. But in this bill, I think the word caste is used. And they pick this up. And they're saying that this is the proof that this bill is designed as an anti-Hindu bill because they use the word caste in it. Now, we talk about the evils of the caste system. And of course, the caste system is inherently embedded into Hindu culture. It is essentially, it's a Hindu product, the caste system. And this is what is rather embarrassing for the Hindus, the fact that the caste system still exists, despite the fact it's supposedly illegal. The caste system basically forms the social structure of India. It forms the social structure of Hindu society. And this bill mentions caste. Yes, it does indeed, because caste system is evil. It needs to be removed. And it is perpetuated across America now, across the diaspora. So it's unsurprising it's being used. But anyway, Hindutva is saying, because you've used the caste word, it means you are anti-Hindu. Well, you can see how the hypocrisy is writ large. So you are admitting that the caste still exists, and you're admitting that you're still perpetuating it, not just in India, but across the diaspora. But anyway, that's another point. And and the narrative they talk about in some of these videos, they say, look, since 2023, 4 Hindu temples have been vandalized. Transnational repression is a distraction. The real issue here is that Hindu temples are being vandalized by these thugs, by these extremists, by these Khalistani terrorists. And again, once again, you can see how the narrative is being spun. Whereas in normal, common sense, democratic California, they can see the truth. They know what's going on here. They can see transnational repression for what it is. They can see thugs, organised crime from India, spreading their violence and their harassment, their intimidation against minority communities, particularly the Sikh community, where they are being literally targeted by gunmen and real world violence. That's the real issue here. Oh no, we've got to talk about these what were likely false flag attempts to vandalise Hindu temples. That's the real issue, according to the Hindutva media. So anyway, unsurprisingly, James, here we have a really good news story. This is this bill going through in California. Great news that it's coming in. And I just want to quickly play. Let me just quickly play you what I mentioned at the beginning. At least 150 members of the Sikh community stepped forward. Let me give you just a flavour of some of them as they spoke.
Thank you, Chair and members. Puneet Kaur on behalf of the Sikh Coalition, Hindus for Human Rights, Jakarta Movement, and the American Sikh Caucus in support of SB509.
I'm Deep Sagul from Sikh American Legal Defense and Education Fund in support of SB 509.
Morning, Chair. My name is Amardeep, CEO of We Sikh. I'm a victim of transnational repression. My name on the list that they want to extradite and kill me. So I'm here on the support of SB 509.
Respected committee members, I am Raj Karan Beer Singh, representing Punjabi Radio USA, all the Punjabi media across California, in strongly support of SB 509. Thank you.
And that went on and on and on. Of course, over 150 people stepped forward. Notice also somebody from Hindus for Human Rights. So when we talk about this Hindu organisation, Kona it was called, this organisation called Kona, they stepped forward very publicly and said, "Oh no, this is all anti-India." Well, the Coalition of Hindus of North America clearly doesn't represent all Hindus of North America, because Hindus for Human Rights even stepped forward and said, "No, this is wrong. What's going on? We need this bill." So there you go, James. Unfortunately, it's very clear what the narrative is going on here. This bill is not anti-Hindu. It's not anti-India. It's anti-Hindutva.
Exactly. And I mean, let's not forget that there's also transnational repression at the hands of Russia, at the hands of, North Korea, at the hands of Iran. We can go on and on with the list. Of course, we know that impacting the majority of the diasporas in California, we're directly talking about India and the Hindutva extremists. But the real point of the bill is not only to bring this law forward and to give more protection, but it's also about increasing awareness. So the more that it gets talked about, the more people learn. The more people learn, the less intimidated they are by the unknown. And I think that goes a long way to break down barriers and to break down racism. When you also look at the fact that if they pass this bill, it will open up funding opportunities for law enforcement agencies across the entire state, not just ones with surpluses, or I shouldn't say surpluses, but those who can actually absorb the extra training budgets. So again, that helps at all levels of law enforcement. It brings a unified and consistent response from all law enforcement agencies, because again, the whole program is unified. So therefore, they are all learning from the same playbooks, and that also helps when they come together for a unified task force to deal and target maybe certain areas where there may be active incidents of transnational repression and foreign interference going on. So again, I think that it is nothing but a great opportunity to cut down on the transnational repression, but also to bring more awareness to the community as a whole and educate the general public about the problem.
Indeed. So well done to Senator Caballero for proposing that bill, and I've no doubt it will be passed, much to the upset of Hindutva. So there you go. Right, James, let's move on to our comment section. Let's wrap the show with our loads of wonderful comments from our wonderful audience. Thank you to each and every one of you who have contributed. Many comments have come in, and so we do read every single one. We do appreciate every single one, so thank you for those. Right, Avatar Dylan, one of our regulars. Thanks. Things are going to get a lot worse before there's any light at the end of the tunnel. Yes, and I think this is an important point, and this is a reminder to our audience. When as they say, it's always darkest before the dawn. People do tend to lose hope, and they think, oh God, how can we beat India? How can we beat this huge resource in India that is trying to stamp out not just the Khalistan movement, but the whole Sikh identity? Well, all I would say is, as Avatar Dylan says, it is always darkest before the dawn. Just when you think, how on earth can we win? We will win this battle. And the point is, the evidence is all over. We are winning this battle, James, are we not?
Absolutely. And as long as we get support from our viewers to get the word out that we're talking about, but also just to really make sure that information that's being passed is credible, then that makes a big difference. So again, it all goes towards winning, Angus.
Indeed it does. There are powerful forces behind the whole Khalistan movement from the Sikh community and indeed outside the Sikh community. It is going to happen. We just have to keep the faith and keep going, keep campaigning. Mountain and forest. This is two words, but really powerful. Sikhs remember. Absolutely they do. And this is really what India needs to remember. Sikhs will never forget. It's not even just not about forgetting. Sikhs remember. They remember the betrayals. They remember the history. And good heavens, I think India needs to be careful. This is why the Khalistan movement is so powerful, because of these two simple words. Sikhs remember.
And those generational scars are not going away anytime soon, and only add to the remembrance and the emotions. So again, it's something that needs to be dealt with. And the best way to deal with it is have the referendum. Let Khalistan be a sovereign nation.
Indeed, and the giant one reminds us, we talk about remembering, it reminds us, of course, the Chichi Singh Pura massacre, which sadly, was it 35 Sikhs were gunned down in cold blood. And it was blamed on at the time on militants, on Islamic militants. But weirdly, and we've talked again with many shows, we've talked about this, is it happened to coincide with a visit by Bill Clinton, the US president. And of course, this reflects the recent visit by JD Vance that preempted that the Pahalgam attacks happened, again, blamed on Islamic terrorists. So once again, the whole narrative here is, it's clearly that the evidence points to them being false flag incidents designed to deliberately turn American attention onto Islamic terrorists. In fact, when in reality, it's quite possible they were false flag. All those attempts were false flag operations by Indian intelligence. And indeed, there has been a whistleblower from the Indian Army who claims that he was part of that attack on Chichi Singh Pura, where they dressed up as Islamic militants. But in fact, it was members of the Indian Army who were behind that massacre, James. So again, false flags.
Absolutely. And let's not forget that Americans have a very emotional connection to 9/11 that still is very raw, even though it's been several decades. But with that, of course, it means that when you start to publicize any actions by the Muslim community, right or wrong, it is embedded in their brains, and all of a sudden it triggers that emotion and that anger. And that's what I think that those who are putting these false flag events out are counting on when it comes to American pressure.
Absolutely right indeed, yes. TC says it's time for Khalistan to control the narrative. Yes, now this is so true, this, is that the narrative has been for so long controlled by the Godi media, by the Indian massive machine of narrative. It creates the agenda, it writes the stories, it publicises them using its massive media machine, and of course that then spreads around the world and it is taken as truth by so many people. So you're absolutely right, TC, we need to get back the narrative. I think we are succeeding in this, James. I think the narrative is being taken back by the pro-Khalistan movement, because more and more people outside India are now actually beginning to see the truth. They are seeing India for what it really is.
Absolutely. And we're starting to see even a few people from inside of India post on our comments every once in a while. So it shows that it's not just on the outside world looking in, it's everywhere, including in India.
Absolutely. Manveer Singh, we talked the other day about a terrible attack on two elderly taxi drivers, Sikh taxi drivers in the UK, in Wolverhampton. And as you say, it's a pretty sad state of affairs. It's appalling, isn't it? Always had a problem when the far right jump onto genuine issues and then vent their fury on anybody who's not white. And this is actually the problem. And again, I don't want to go down this rabbit hole of the immigration discussion. The problem with the immigration discussion, though, is that those on the extremes, the extreme left and the extreme right, have jumped into this argument, and you cannot have a sensible argument, a discussion, a debate about the real issue here of immigration, because the far right just see anybody who's not white as an immigrant and a problem, therefore needs to be attacked. And the far left stop us having the discussion about saying we can't have so much uncontrolled immigration, because they accuse everybody of being racist. So the problem is, normal people in the middle of this discussion who want to have a grown-up, common sense, sensible debate discussion about immigration can't have it, because you've got the idiots on the far right basically beating up anybody who's not white, and you've got the idiots on the far left who are saying, oh, you're all racist because you're talking about it. How do we do this, James?
Exactly, Angus. And let's not forget that it wasn't that long ago, in the 80s and 90s, there were periods of time where immigrants to the US would actually try to lighten their skin so that they could be more assimilated into the culture and the communities without people attacking them. Is that what we're really going to turn to again? Is that what we're going to see happening? People, and I don't mean the literal, right now, I don't mean the literal lightening of the skin, but I'm just saying that fear, that embedded fear of people walking the streets because of the fact that some idiots out there are behaving like this against anybody that's not the same as them. I mean, we don't want to see a time where people lived in fear like that. And unfortunately, it seems to be becoming more prevalent, Angus.
Indeed, sadly. But the good news is that these people on the extreme left and the extreme right, that word extreme implies they're not the mainstream. They are the extremists. They are the minority. The majority of us can have grown-up conversations about these things. It's just that we need to try and keep these idiots, these lunatics on both extremes, out of the discussion, out of the argument. And I think slowly but surely we are having more and more grown-up conversations about these sorts of subjects. So we just got to keep these extremists to the extremes. Right, James, let's get really serious. Now, somebody has noticed, Harjeet Rocha has noticed, that you're looking younger recently. What cream are you using?
I think it must be my makeup artists. I've got 6 of them that bring in these, putty knives and spatulas and stucco. I think it must just be the haircut. She did a great job at the haircut, but I don't really have a makeup artist team.
Indeed. So thank you, Harjeet Rocha, who took pride of place in the flattery's corner.
I appreciate the comment. Thank you.
Right, and then final set, Manjit Kaur, who does on a regular basis just jump in. There's a little shout out to Manjit Kaur. Thank you. Hi, Angus and James. As you know, James, I do like to shout out to many of our watchers who just jump in with a little hi, good morning, whatever. But just to say, we do appreciate you. We do notice your little comments, even if it's just a little hi, as Manjit has done. So thank you, Manjit, for that. And we do appreciate all of you who just jump in with the little highs and good mornings, what have you. Much appreciated. Now, Stay Safe, of course, is one of our regular contributors. And this made me laugh, actually. I've taken all the info and perspectives. You watch beginning to end. You don't skip. Well done. And he played it 2 times faster. Yes, apparently there are ways to do that. And I don't know, James, do you know how to play YouTube twice as fast?
Yeah, you can just tap on your screen on the speed there. And if you speed it up really quick, we sound like Alvin and the Chipmunks.
Right. So if I speak really slowly... So there you go. Anyway, it's a nice tip from Stay Safe, and thank you for your loyalty and thank you for sticking with us. Much appreciated. And indeed, as you say, I can't wait till you go live soon. Well, hopefully it is fast approaching. We've got a few technical things we're just still trying to sort out, but we're nearly there. So do stay tuned. And Peace Lovers says, at least true journalists still exist. Well, what is a true journalist? I don't know. I think you flatter us by saying this. All we do, we just do a simple job. We just try to bring you the truth. We do nothing more than just to try to bring you what we believe is the truth. We try to corroborate as much as we can. We are not part of the go-to media. We are up against this massive machine that's massively funded by India, by Hindutva, by the RSS, etc., to ensure that one side only ever gets broadcast to the people of India. Well, we exist. You call us true journalists? I don't know, but I appreciate the thought. Ultimately, James, we are here just to bring you the truth. Nothing more than that.
And here I thought maybe they were referring to Surinder and the other programs because, you know, some people like to think of us as the court jesters.
Exactly. If you want to watch the serious news, do watch Surinder because he knows his stuff. But of course, that is in Punjabi. So if you want the English news, we're here just to amuse and entertain you, according to many of our critics. So anyway, our final comment goes to another one of our regular Hardar saying, thank you for your comment. Yes, the Republic of Khalistan. I always do like to finish on a comment about Khalistan because, as we open the comments, don't lose faith. It is happening. The narrative is being won. The argument is being won. Democracy, as I always say, democracy always wins in the end, James. It is the people who always win in the end, as history has proven over and over again. It doesn't matter what happens. The people always win in the end, do they not?
Absolutely. And the other anomaly that's going to happen in Khalistan when it comes to politics is we're finally going to find a place in the world where we can have intelligent politicians.
Good heavens, that really will be a change against the flow of normality. We'll see it when it happens. But anyway, we'll look forward to that day. Let's make sure that we make it happen. Let's prove that will be the case. So get out there and support the Khalistan cause. But on that note, we will bring Perspectives to close for another day. Please don't forget to keep comments coming in. Much appreciated to all of those who have contributed. Don't forget you can message us directly at message@satlugetv.com. If there's anything you'd like to bring to our attention directly, as many of you have done, thank you for that. But that is it for another day. Thanks so much for watching. Thanks so much for your loyalty. It's a goodbye from me. Goodbye from James.
Stay safe, everyone.
You have, of course, been watching Perspectives. We will see you next time.